The sky glows with fire. Villages collapse into ash. Families scatter in terror as black riders thunder past, and at the center of it all, one man. They called him terrible. But to those who lived beneath his hand, that word was far too kind. Ivan IV, crowned as Russia's first Tsar, carved his empire not with honor, but with fear. His wrath consumed nobles and peasants alike. His secret army of Oprichniki spread nightmares wherever they rode. And in a fit of rage, he struck down his own son, the heir who carried Russia's future. Mad tyrant, visionary ruler, or something darker. This is the reign of Ivan the Terrible. Rise to power. Ivan's story began in blood. As a child, he watched the boyar nobles tear apart his family's power. His mother was poisoned, her allies murdered before his eyes. From the start, betrayal was his tutor, and paranoia his constant companion. Yet destiny raised him higher. In 1547, at just 16 years old, Ivan crowned himself the first Tsar of all Russia. No longer a mere prince, but a ruler who claimed divine authority. At first, he brought hope. He reformed the laws, curbed corruption, and created Russia's first standing army. For a moment, the future seemed brighter. The people saw in him a leader who could unite a fractured land. But even in triumph, the shadows of his childhood never left him. And those shadows would soon consume the throne itself. The shift into terror. The turning point came with a single death, when his beloved wife, Anastasia, suddenly fell ill and died. Anastasia had been his anchor, the one presence that softened his darker impulses. With her gone, Ivan's grief was absolute. He lashed out, accusing nobles, boyars, even his closest advisors of betrayal. Whispers spread through Moscow that the Tsar no longer trusted anyone, not even God's will. Grief twisted into paranoia. Suspicion became obsession, and soon, Ivan unleashed a nightmare on his own people. He carved the nation in two, one half left to his officials, the other, the Oprichnina, belonging solely to him. This was no mere administrative reform. It was a state within a state, ruled by terror, with Ivan as its dark heart. But their cruelty went beyond hunting. The Oprichniki paraded through towns in silence, their horses draped in black, their presence alone enough to send families fleeing. They seized land, confiscated wealth, and carried out executions in public squares, turning death into theater. For the first time, terror itself became a tool of governance in Russia. Villages burned. Nobles were dragged in chains. Executions became spectacles of terror. In Novgorod, accused of treason, thousands were slaughtered. The city left smoldering in ash and blood. The massacre was not a single event, but days of unrelenting horror. Men, women, and children were drowned in the icy Volkhov River, their cries echoing under church bells that tolled like funeral songs. Entire families vanished overnight. The smoke of Novgorod's ruin darkened the sky, a warning to every other city. Defy Ivan, and you would share their fate. Once a reformer, now a tyrant, Ivan no longer ruled with hope, but with fear. And fear, in time, would consume everything. The infamous son. By 1581, Ivan's rage had become legend. Paranoia ruled his court, and even his family lived in fear of his wrath. One night, in a fit of fury, Ivan struck his own son and heir with his staff. The blow was fatal. In a single moment, the Tsar of Russia destroyed not just his child, but the very future of his dynasty. The chamber fell silent, servants froze in horror, and Ivan, realizing what he had done, was left holding his dying son in his arms. That image, a father cradling the heir he had just killed, became the symbol of his reign. A ruler so consumed by suspicion and anger, he extinguished his own bloodline. It was more than the death of a prince. It was the death of hope for Russia, for the dynasty, and for Ivan himself. From that night on, his legacy was sealed in shadow. The scars of his reign. By the end of his rule, the scars of Ivan's reign were carved deep into Russia itself. Entire villages lay in ruins, fields turned to wasteland. Families were broken, scattered, or gone entirely. What remained was a country hollowed out by fear. The nobility, once powerful, was shattered. Ivan had crushed their influence so completely that no rival power could ever truly stand against the throne again. The wars he waged drained Russia's strength. The economy faltered, trade routes collapsed, and famine stalked the land. His ambition left the nation weaker than before, and yet more tightly bound under a single crown. For in his tyranny, Ivan had forged something enduring, centralized absolute power. The blueprint of Russian autocracy, the idea that the Tsar ruled not by law but by will, would outlive him, shaping centuries to come. What Ivan left behind was not only devastation but a system, one that promised order, but at a terrible cost. Reflection and legacy. In 1584, Ivan the Terrible's reign finally came to an end. He died in Moscow and was buried within the walls of the Kremlin he had once ruled with iron will. But his death brought no peace. Russia was left shaken, broken, and leaderless, sliding toward the chaos of the time of troubles. Even now, historians debate what terrible truly meant. In Russian, Grozny was less about cruelty and more about dread, awe, and power. He was not just a monster, but a force of history itself. To some, he was a visionary who centralized power and built the foundations of the Russian state. To others, he was a paranoid tyrant who bled his nation dry. Both may be true. For Ivan IV scarred Russia with fire and blood. His name became legend, and his shadow has never truly left.